Welcome to Mountain Strong. Today we've come back to Campbell Creek Estuary Park. Decided to go ahead and come back here because it's pretty close to our house and it is a beautiful place. We're in a pretty stressful period of our lives right now. In about 72 hours we're going to be getting on a plane, and in between now and then we actually have a container to load up with our possessions. We pack it ourselves and it's going to be carried all the way down to our home in Phoenix. So we have about 2 weeks of travel after that. Monday flight, we have to arrive in Oregon and then drive down to Phoenix. And so stressful period, but it was amazing coming to a place like this, how easily the stress kind of melts away. And hopefully we're going to get some good shots of the sunset. I'm going to save that for the next video. We'll look at Psalm number 139 for now. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You hem me in, behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain it. Where shall I go from your spirit? Or whence shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light about me be night. Even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is bright as the day. The darkness is as light with you. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God, how vast is the sum of them. If I could count them, they are more than the sand. I awake, and I am still with you. Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God. O men of blood, depart from me. They speak against you with malicious intent. Your enemies take your name in vain. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with complete hatred. I count them my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. In this psalm, the psalmist reflects upon the omniscience of God, or the fact that God knows everything. In the first 5 verses, he reflects about how God knows in particular everything about him. There is not one aspect of his character, there is not one thing that he has done, or even, as the psalm will go on to say, one thing that he will do that God does not know. God knows everything there is to know about the psalmist. Now, the response that he has to that is kind of a response of shock. You know, when you get the sense that someone is watching you, I don't know if you ever have had that feeling, and maybe have been startled to see that, yes, in fact, someone was watching you. You kind of appreciate the psalmist's response to that. In verse number 6, he says, such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain it. I can't understand how you could know everything about me, even though he says, I know you do. But then he continues to reflect upon the omniscience of God, and there are 2 main points of reflection in the verses that follow. First of all, he reflects upon the fact that if God knows everything about me, that there is nowhere that I can actually hide from God. I can't go anywhere where God is not. And so God is not just omniscient about this moment, he is actually omniscient about this moment all around the universe. And so he says, there's nowhere I can hide in verses 7 through 12. But then also in verses 13 through 16, as he continues to reflect about God and his omniscience, he says, if God knows me, verses 1 through 5, then he also knows about my past and he knows about my future. And so the first response, after he realized that God knew everything about him, was shock. The second response is actually to reflect upon what that says about God. It's one thing to know that God knows everything, but it's another thing to actually stop and think about that. And so in verses 17 and 18, he reflects upon how precious God's thoughts are. God knows everything. He knows everyone. And yet, for some reason, he has chosen to have some interest in me in my life. And so how precious are your thoughts, O God? How vast the sum of them. You know everything, and yet there's a relationship that you've sought to form with me. And so he says, thinking about the greatness of my God in terms of his knowledge, I can't count the thoughts that God has. They're like the sands of the sea. He reflects upon omniscience, but allows that thought to inform the greatness of God and the glory of God and His respect for God. And it's important for all of that to have happened, because all of the psalm teaches good things in terms of knowledge about God and helpful thoughts in terms of realizing that you can't go anywhere where God isn't and so on. But one thing that sometimes people don't do is they don't often connect the attributes of God, His omniscience, His omnipresence, His omnipotence, all-powerfulness. They don't always connect those attributes of God with realistic struggles that they are facing in life. And I love how this psalm teaches us to do that. You go to this psalm all the time for various reasons, fearfully and wonderfully made, there's nowhere I can go without God, etc. But the connection that the psalm makes of those realities is that, I've got a problem. And if I've got a problem, that has something to do with God's omniscience. So the psalmist actually turns in reflection to the thing that he's facing right now. In verses 19 and 20, he talks about how if God knows everything, then He knows the psalmist's enemies. He knows the people who are facing him right now. And so he's connected his present problem, his enemies, with the enemies that he's facing. And then he closes out the psalm simply by saying that God knows him as well. He says, don't you know that I am not like these people? He realizes God knows all of this. It's a very interesting way to pray about a problem, because really the thing is about the problems that I face, God knows the outcome. And even though I still have to do my part, God's omniscience does not affect or alter my free will responsibilities. If I apply myself properly, God knows the outcome and it's going to work out. And so it's a very powerful way to reflect upon problems. And so I encourage you to reflect, of course, upon the omniscience of God, but when you do so, connect omniscience with the problem that you are facing right now. And I'm sure you'll find that it's very helpful to do so. May God bless you today.